Good afternoon, and welcome to another of our conversations with city and community leaders. As we begin, I remind you to, if you have questions throughout the program, to put your questions in the Q&A. We'll be monitoring that, and that way we don't have to bounce back and forth between the chat and the Q&A. It's my pleasure to have today as our guest, Meg McWade. Meg has had over 29 years of local government experience, including most recently serving as Public Works Director for the City of Fullerton. In her prior positions, she worked for the City of Harbor Heights, the City of Pomona, in the areas of fire, finance, public works, and utilities. She has spent many years in the public field implementing various programs and projects, helping agencies receive both and achieve both American Public Works Association Best Awards in recognition of energy efficiency, and the list goes on and on. Ms. McWade holds a bachelor's degree from Carroll College in Helena, Montana, and a master's in public administration from California State University, San Bernardino. She enjoys working in the field of public works and is looking forward to partnering with business and community to find solutions for the city's current challenges. Meg, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So a quick glance at the city would tell you that Meg wears lots of hats. She's responsible for building and facilities, engineering, equipment maintenance, landscape, engineering and traffic, water systems, sewer systems, streets and sidewalks, capital improvement projects, and environmental programs. I would say there's hardly a thing that you don't touch, although I do notice that fire is no longer in your portfolio. So perhaps that's a relief for you, because that's a very complex field.
It is, yes.
So Meg, I know you have a program prepared for us today, but if you want to give any introductory comments, we would welcome them.
Okay, well, thank you. I believe I actually almost within my first month, I came and spoke with this group on water rates and investment in the water infrastructure. And so thank you for having me again. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm very grateful. Teresa mentioned that I've been in public works for a really long time. I love public works. I love what we do. So thank you for letting me come here and share with you my passion for this. And then are you ready for me to give
We are ready for your little
hopefully
presentation. Hopefully Zoom is our friend tonight.
It will share the screen properly. Let's double click. Okay, did that work?
That worked.
Perfect, thank you.
So if you can just put it into slideshow mode so we don't see your notes, and we'll be ready to go.
Okay, so let me see. So you're seeing my notes because I am not seeing my notes right now. Let's swap. Does it look normal to you on the screen now?
Oh, I would just say go ahead.
Okay.
I'm still seeing them, but that's all right.
Okay. Let me see. All right, I'll just go. So basically, what is public works? Let me go on to the next slide. Let's swap this. So we are responsible, Teresa mentioned the things that we cover. So design and construction for water, wastewater, drainage, floods, streets, parks, facilities, and also to maintain that infrastructure on a long-term basis. And we also provide water services, as well as we convey the sewer away from your home when you're done with that water. We do that with 7 divisions. So sorry about the notes, they're really distracting, but 7 divisions. There's engineering, administration, water system operations, sewer and facilities maintenance, and then streets and landscape and equipment maintenance and replacement. So what do we maintain? So we are responsible for ADA requirements. Right now we're going through a transition plan. So we had an original plan back in the 90s. We obviously need to update it. So we're identifying all the needs and the future projects for us to make sure we're in compliance. We have alleys and buildings and monument signs, parking structures, sewer systems, water systems, airport, and bridges. So that's the broad range of infrastructure that we oversee on a regular basis. I know that we have, and I don't know if Teresa, you'd rather me end sharing the screen. I just wanted to give a really brief overview of public works. let me stop sharing just because I feel like it's not really effective sharing. Are we back to the normal screen then?
We are back to normal.
Perfect.
As normal as we can be in this crazy COVID world. So that's a huge scope of things. And I think one of the things that I'm most curious about, and I actually hope to do a future program on, is our airport.
Oh, yes.
Our airport is something that's unique to our city, something that I'm sure is an asset that many don't even understand the complexities of. Before we get into some of the other topics, tell us a little bit about the airport.
Okay. I think one of the reasons I came to work for Fullerton is I had never been responsible for an airport. So this was an exciting kind of foray into something new for me. We're one of the few general aviation airports in the Orange County area, or in the Southern California area. And we have clients there. The Orange County Fire Association or agency is there. CHP flies out of there. We have people come in from all over. It's typically your smaller aircraft, obviously. And to me, the real benefit of the airport not only is the commuting feature and the ability maybe in the future when you think about unmanned cars, they're also talking about unmanned aircraft. There is really this kind of future looking, where can we go with this really jewel in our area. We have, I believe it can have up to 600 airplanes there. We have lease spaces, we have a hangar, we have a restaurant, Wings Airport Restaurant, and so that helps bring in revenue for us. And we have the ability to, FAA offers, they want to encourage these general aviation airports to stay in existence. So they offer oftentimes matching funds for us to do improvements at the airport. And so it's really this wonderful jewel. We're looking to potentially expand it in the future. The airport is self-sustaining. It does not take general fund to run the airport. It is fully funded by not only the people that go and operate their businesses there to help us run the airport, but also from the lease revenue from the hangars and from the restaurants that are existing.
That's great to hear. So one of the things, big elephants in the room lately that we hear about, and I'm going to address two in particular. In past years, we had a review of our water rates.
Yes.
Explain the water rate process and how they arrived at the new fees, and what you have from sitting at your space, which is certainly overseeing many departments, and this is just one of them. But explain a little bit about the water program and how it works here in Fullerton and what our partnership with MWD is.
Okay. So Fullerton is very fortunate. Many in the early 1900s, the city saw fit to develop its groundwater system. And so the vast majority of our water comes from groundwater, our pumping plants that exist here. The city also has Orange County Water District is essentially in charge of the groundwater basin. We share the basin with many other providers here in the area. And so Orange County serves almost as the groundwater management authority for it. MWD is our import water supply. Although we are very fortunate to have the groundwater and we do a lot of pumping, we still have the need to import water to meet our demands. Metropolitan Water District is the wholesale water supplier, and we are a member agency of MWD. We have a voting right on the board, but MWD imports water from both Colorado River as well as State Water Project. So that water comes in and helps us, particularly in the summertime months when we have to pump more, to help with our peaking needs. In terms of the water rates and the infrastructure, we had a lot of pipes that went in roughly at the same time. So we have over 400 miles of pipe, and over half of it had reached its useful life. We also here in Fullerton, we have caustic soils. So some of our pipes that were put in the ground haven't lasted as long as perhaps they would have if we didn't have this situation. And so we had a lot of the failing pipes happening at once. If you live in the community of Ash, you know, we've been in your neighborhood fixing leaks at least 11 times. And so we had to dedicate make sure that we had the funding to start an aggressive replacement project and program for the pipelines, as well as the other infrastructure. We have wells as old as from the 1920s. Those wells and that infrastructure needs to be replaced. And so those water rates were developed in such a manner to start that replacement and make sure our system stayed reliable.
The other thing that we think about in terms of feet and miles of, so we have miles and miles of water pipes to our community,
Yes.
miles and miles of sewer pipes, and miles of roads.
Yes.
It's kind of a standing joke among my group of friends that you can always tell when you hit Fullerton because you hit a pothole. Tell me a little bit of our road conditions and the steps that the city is taking to do its best to secure up the roads or to change this culture of, oh my gosh, I've hit Fullerton and the roads are rough.
So I would say that you are absolutely right. Our road conditions were rated in the low 60s. What pavement condition index, every 2 years, we have an independent firm come in and rate the roads in Fullerton. It's basically an engineering firm that evaluates every arterial and the local streets that we have, the residential roads. And that's one thing we do is so that we know the condition of the roads. We have almost 300 miles of roadways, but it's also so that we can retain funding because it's a requirement of M2 funds. But the roads are definitely in need of upgrading. The city currently has, prior to COVID, we had about 4.8 million every year to provide for those roadway improvements. And unfortunately with COVID, it's actually down to $4.1 million. With our most recent PMP, or that evaluation that I talked about, the annual need to maintain the condition at its current level is $8 million. So we definitely have a resource issue when it comes to needing to invest in roadways. I would say that some of the things that the city has done to kind of reinvest in roadways is there have been recent sales of property as well as recent sales of Rule 20A. It's undergrounding money. We had it available to us. We sold it so that we could then reinvest into our roadways. So the city council had designated one-time revenues for us to use. And then separately, the city has developed an ordinance, and that ordinance is identifying any new funding source that comes in. 50% of it will go to infrastructure, and one of the main needs for infrastructure is the roadways. So that is really how we're going to bring the condition of the roads up.
It's a frightening thought to think that we are trying to maintain our roads on approximately half of what it really takes. When we look at the reduction from 4.2 to 4.1 this past year, or even looking at the past 6 months since COVID hit, are the funds being redirected to other emphasis, or are they just not available?
So they're just not, it's really, they're just not available. This is the Measure M sales tax money that was coming into us. And so because there's reduced revenues for the sales tax itself, we're getting a reduced amount. The SB1 gas tax too, they anticipate it to be lower just because COVID, people weren't driving, they were staying at home. So it's really the revenue reduction from COVID itself that is impacting us. So what that means for Fullerton is we had to delay. We have a very minimal maintenance program. So when a roadway is in fairly decent condition, sometimes we're coming in there and we're doing something to the roadway, and your neighbors with a worse road saying, what are you doing? Well, that investment in that road will help to maintain its 20-year, maybe extend it even further. It's almost like sunscreen on your skin. That investment money, right? It maintains that condition of that roadway in a good way. And so we had to delay that project because we do not have the funding to do that.
So because you and I talk the terms of acronyms and legislation all the time,
right.
Let's back up and explain just from a 40-foot view, what is Measure M? And how does that come to the city?
So Measure M was, you may see as you drive along the roadways, an OC Go sign. Measure M was really led by Orange County, and it is transportation related funds for the entire county. Fullerton gets a portion of those funds, and the portion of those funds is really used for, it is used for roadway maintenance, but there's a whole other amount of money. So we get roughly a little over, I think it's $4 million total. There's hundreds of millions of dollars available, but it's not available to us for roadway maintenance. It's available for expansion projects or signal synchronization projects. So there was a lot of money coming in, but when the voters voted for that, they voted for it to be devoted to those things. So a portion of it comes to us for regular roadway maintenance, and we redirect that into the roads. And then the larger pot of money that goes to Orange County itself stays with the Orange County for those expansion projects as well as the other. And signal synchronization, it's really like you're driving down Harbor, and it's so that from La Habra all the way down to the beach areas, you're not going to stop in Fullerton because we haven't synchronized those signals to keep that traffic flowing.
So it's a whole series of, Measure M, and now the successor Measure M2 was a sales tax initiative launched by the County of Orange for the whole county to maintain the roads, and Fullerton gets a portion of the pool, if I can summarize correctly.
Yes.
And then you also mentioned SB1, which again, we know was a state piece of legislature that passed to provide a sales tax, additional sales tax or additional tax on fuel that was pumped. And how much of that does Fullerton get, or just percentage wise, or is it a huge amount, or is it, you know?
In comparison to what we need, it's $2.1 to $2.2 million a year. So it's significant in terms of when you're looking at that, we have the fact that we have $4 million to invest. It's about half of our investment money, but it's not significant in terms of our need.
So beyond the Measure M2 and the SB1, are there any sources of revenue that the city can apply to in grants and other types of things to sustain a reliable source of funding for our roads?
So actually, there are minor pots of money. So we were able to accomplish Wilshire Bike Boulevard, right? A lot of people don't love the roundabouts, but by virtue of having those roundabouts and encouraging the bicycling, we actually got the pavement. So when you do ATP, active transportation planning type projects, sometimes you can add the roadways into it and you can get that funding. But there is not a funding pot of money for actual maintenance and rehabilitation. So we go after also funding for, sometimes there are additives. There's like rubberized asphalt mix. It's a way for CalRecycle to convert tires into a useful product. It helps extend the life of a roadway. So the incremental cost difference they'll fund, but they won't fund the cost of the roadway itself. And so we go after those kind of grants when it makes sense for us to do so, but there is not a pot of money where we could say Fullerton has needs of $100 million and we need 10 million of it. There aren't those granting pots available to us.
Okay, it's a very complex issue, and I think one that a lot of people, including myself, don't really understand what's involved. I'm going to kind of hit on some of the other things because I think it's important to economic recovery. Yesterday, we met with some of the downtown Fullerton restaurants to talk about their needs moving forward and what the city is doing to accommodate their needs to be able to open. Tell me about your role in that process of economic development, focused on the recovery as we come out of the COVID-19 era.
So obviously having our businesses stay vital is important to us. And yet for public works, we're bureaucracy, right? So we oftentimes, when we develop a program, we like to develop it with lots of rules and regulations. Well, we got out of our own way, and within weeks we were basically allowing outdoor dining We had closed Wilshire Boulevard in order to enable some space for that outdoor dining and outdoor retail. We are issuing permits for both public and private property to enable people to mobilize outside. And that was free of charge. And we are with a turnaround time of less than 5 days. We really need these businesses to stay sustainable. And right now we're looking at extending the program. It's through November 2nd. We're looking at extending it at least through April 1st. And we're also, as more and more businesses, we recently had a request for outdoor productions. We're trying to be flexible and trying to figure out how do we get them outside, within the governor's orders and the county's orders, how do we make sure the businesses stay vital?
I think that's critical. And I love the city's attitude that staff is adopting, and I believe it's from the top down, and we'll be having a program with Ken Domer again. We started out our series with him, but we'll be having another one later to really get to yes. I think it's so important to figure out how to get to yes and how to present a positive outlook for the public and the business community. Our streets and sidewalks, we covered a little bit about the sidewalks, but I noticed recently quite a few of the sidewalks are also being torn up and being retrofitted. Explain a little bit about, again, the process of this, and again, is it something that's being funded from some magic bag of money, or is it grants, or why and what's going on there with our sidewalks?
So we do curb and gutter and sidewalk projects, that's what we call it. We're looking for areas where we've had issues with perhaps tree roots lifting the sidewalks, destroying the infrastructure. Even though trees are beautiful, they do have a cost to them, or they've affected, for example, the drainage on the gutter. They've affected the drainage, so now we have ponding and pooling water. We do take a portion of the street's money and we devote it to that so that we have ADA path of travel that works, and we prioritize it. We have many more on the list than we can get to. So we look at, right, where is it close to a school, where is it close to somebody with accessibility issues, and we prioritize based on that.
Like I said, there's so many different areas that you really focus on. So if you wouldn't mind, highlight a couple of the big capital improvement projects that the city is undertaking right now, if they are in the current financial crisis.
So we have actually several, we have infrastructure projects. So the Drake Jacaranda area is getting some water and sewer and also some roadway. We have Ash that's coming up, which is out to design. We have the duck pond rehabilitation, and sometimes when you're struggling financially and somebody sees a duck pond going into place, they say, why are you doing that? Why don't you redirect that money to the roads? It is actually specific to parks and parks improvement, and so it isn't redirected, and that actually is helping us not only improve the park but also for drainage purposes. We recently completed Woodcrest. We have for those that drive Euclid, we have 2 segments over the next several years that will be done on Euclid so that we can, and that's by using SB1 funding. We're doing Commonwealth shortly here, segments of Commonwealth, segments of Orangethorpe. So where we have money, we're trying to direct it as best we can. And sometimes people ask, why aren't you doing more? And I think that some things that people don't realize is that over time, some regulations have changed for us. We're government, and so sometimes people look and say, it's a lot cheaper for me to do my road than it is for you, city, and what's your problem? And part of that is because we have prevailing wage rules. We have rules from the state where we have to pay a certain labor rate, and that drives our costs up 40 to 50% compared to what a private person could do at their own home. And then we also have regulations for ADA compliance. When we do major rehabilitation on a street and there is no curb cut on the corner, or there is, say 10 years ago or 20 years ago when we put in the curb cut, it's now no longer compliant, we have to redo that as part of the project. So all of those things increase the cost, and we don't get quite as far with the money that we have available to us.
So many challenges that we have with an aging city. How do we stand with our municipal buildings? Are they going to be sound, and how long do you see City Hall, the maintenance facility that you occupy, and these other city-owned facilities being able to operate without major upgrades?
We actually had a third party come in and do an evaluation of our facilities, and they have identified millions of dollars of needed upgrades and replacement over the next 10 years. And so that includes things from roofs to HVAC system, air conditioning systems, heater systems. It includes replacement of windows, doors, electrical system upgrades. So there is a lot of deferred maintenance that has been happening at our buildings, and we really have a need to reinvest in those. One thing that I didn't talk about, and we're touching on the infrastructure, we did have an infrastructure review committee. So we had a group of individuals, residents here, that spent months and months and months studying the infrastructure, looking at everything from the 40 some odd bridges that we have, 28 miles of trails, our 40,000 trees that we need to maintain on a regular basis, all the sidewalks you talked about. It didn't go into the ADA requirements or some of the major streetlight issues we have, which could be upwards of $30 million, but it did address that we have a need with roadways as well as all that other infrastructure of almost $20 million a year.
That hardly begins to, I'm looking at your budgets, and I'm just astounded at the shortfalls and some of the challenges that we're facing. So recap for me really quickly, if you can, and you started to do a laundry list just then. The miles of roads, the miles of pipes, the numbers of bridges that we're responsible for. Can you kind of go through those again? And if you want to pull up a document or go back to your slides, I get it.
I had it here, and then I think I deleted it because I thought it was too much. But
Oh.
let me list it off for you, the ones that I remember. So I know we have over 40,000 street trees, and when you think about street trees, some of them need almost biannual maintenance. You picture the Chinese elms, they get very bushy very quickly, and so they need to be maintained at a fairly high level. 28 miles of pipe, or 28 miles of trails, including fencing and everything that goes along with the trails. We have 40 buildings that we need to maintain, which includes the restroom, and 32 of which are community centers and other buildings. We have almost 300 miles of streets. We have 400 miles of water pipeline, 10 treatment wells themselves, 15 reservoirs. So we have almost 8,000 streetlights. So those are just some of the things. And then parks, we also maintain the parks. So it's the parks, lighting within the parks, right? It's the sidewalks that are in the parks. It's all those things that need to be replaced. Even some of the monument signs. I know that we have to get in there and upgrade some of those too. So it's
the
a
list
broad
goes
range.
on and on and on. And
Yes.
I know as I was promoting this, I said, so let's take a look below the surface. But below the surface, there is, both above and below the surface of the road, there's so much that's going on that I think most people don't consider the dollars and cents. I know as a homeowner, I call the plumber and I've got a $400 bill, or whatever it is. But
Yes.
with the city and at the scope of its infrastructure, it certainly is much, much deeper. I think we're also a very unique city in that we live on a railroad. So the railroad spurs that connect our business community to the railroad are certainly not within the jurisdiction of your maintenance, I don't think, but certainly probably impact a lot of what goes on, including our grade separations. And explain a little bit about the partnership that existed to recently change those grade separations so that the traffic doesn't need to stop.
So we have a really great partnership with the Orange County Transportation Authority. And so we were able to partner not only on State College, but also Raymond. Those were hundreds of millions of dollars projects, and we paid less than $10 million for both of those. So we were able to redesign the whole area and get these beautiful projects completed that help streamline our traffic and basically separate us from any kind of the dangers that exist from those railroad tracks being in conflict with our traffic.
So I know that that was a lengthy process, but one that's taken, I know it's taken years. We're all going gray over it, and we just watch the roads, but gradually the circulation improves so much. Just making sure that we can traverse our community, that we can work on, making sure we have clean, safe water, to make sure that we have sewers that provide the proper infrastructure to, and then, working with the council members to make sure that they understand how we're connected to our neighbors, to the county, and to the greater infrastructure of Southern California. As I said, I just find it a fascinating topic. And I'm sure there are many other things that you could address within the scope of really what is within your jurisdiction. I'm sure I'm missing a lot of things, but I'm going to give you a chance to kind of talk and highlight things that I may have forgotten to address.
Well, as you were talking, I was thinking about some of the partnerships we have, and Orange County Water District is a partnership that comes to mind, just because within weeks of us adopting those water rates, literally within weeks, the Division of Drinking Water lowered some water quality standards, and they did not go through a normal process. A normal process for lowering water quality standards involves scientific evidence, it involves peer reviews, it involves our input, meaning all of the water agencies, it involves the state getting involved. It was done administratively. And so within weeks of us adopting our water rates that needed to invest in our system, we were facing a water quality challenge that could take out up to 40% of our water supply. Orange County, there was a lot to this, but ultimately it boils down to Orange County Water District has agreed to help us fund the treatment plants that are necessary to treat our groundwater. So we have been working with them, and Fullerton will be actually the first in line to get one of the treatment plants. They've already approved the specifications, they're out on the streets. So we are working with them, and without them, we wouldn't have the funding. It's millions and millions of dollars for us to update these wells to provide for this treatment. So that's just one of the partnerships that is so important to how Fullerton runs.
That's great. I know that in Fullerton, there's this great tool that many don't know about, and that's the My Fullerton app.
Oh, yes.
Highlight some of the things that you can do with this My Fullerton app, because I think a lot of them fall under your jurisdiction.
They do, a lot of them. And actually, it's a great thing because not all, although a lot of our services are in-house, not all of them are in-house, and graffiti is one that was outsourced several years ago. And when the graffiti company came on, it's actually their app. So by virtue of this partnership, they helped us develop something that anybody can use. You can download it on your Android phone or your Apple phone and on your computer. And basically it can allow you to help us report service requests. So they come into us and then we can communicate back to you when that service request is completed. So it enables it to be streamlined. You can take pictures, you can give us, it kind of helps us geolocate. The more information you give us, the better on it. But it really helps us identify where we need to direct our resources. You can report potholes, street lights out, a wide range of things.
Yeah, I found it's a great tool. I know whether it's having a sign that's obstructed by foliage, or a pothole that's impacting my, progress, or certainly the graffiti on public and both private and public properties. They are able to come in and you can report it and provide a cleanup opportunity. So any of you who have not downloaded the My Fullerton app, that's my tip of the day, is to make sure that you go forward and download that app, because you can report graffitis, problems with drainage on your streets, potholes, sidewalk repairs, as she mentioned, street lights that are out, any kind of water leaks that you see. Whether it's a fire hydrant that's leaking and you see water wasted, we want to, as a community, make sure that we are doing our best to be conscientious, and we are all the eyes and ears of the city.
And thank you, Teresa, because that is such an important point. Sometimes people will drive by something, not at this agency, but I had another agency where somebody said, I've driven by that for 5 weeks. And the question was asked, did you ever report it? Because maybe we didn't drive by it. So please, you are so important. It's a partnership. And so you reporting something to us is really, really important.
That's great. Well, with that, I want to kind of wrap up our program today. I appreciate you, Meg, for coming on and talking with us. Next week, we will be talking with Mayor Jennifer Fitzgerald as we continue our conversations with our community and civic leaders. So tune in next week at 4 p.m. on Thursday for a great conversation, and tell your friends not to miss Jennifer Fitzgerald, our mayor of this great city of Fullerton. So thank you, everybody, for participating. Thank you again, Meg, and we will move on and get on to the rest of our days. So thank you again so much.
Very much.
Thank you for being a part of this.
Thank you.